Hello there. It's so nice to see everyone again virtually. You're on season 3 already. Yes. We're more than halfway through season 3 of Music and Chat with Shirley Ong. And it's a good morning from me to you in Singapore. See, it's bright and sunny. Hey. Please say hi in the live chat and let us know where you're tuning in from. And don't be backward and coming forward. And remember to put any questions you may have in the same live chat so that I may attend to them as the stream moves along. Please subscribe to support my work. Thank you so very much. So it's 9:33 a.m. here in Singapore. So let's get on with the stream. I want to say hi to a few of you who are tuning in. So we have Ben, my good friend Ben. I'll just place his greeting right up there. Morning, Ben. Thank you so much for tuning in. I know it's a Monday in Singapore. Yes, it's Monday. Glorious Monday. Anyone else out there want to say hi? Hey, it's time for the hearty party. Gary Mayulo from Frederick, Maryland in the States. It's their Sunday night. Anyone else want to say hi? Please, the live chat is right there. And I will eagle eye it as the stream moves along. You know my style. So, okay, without further ado, I want to perform a piece for you, micro-tunneling, I called it. It's a movement from my large format piece. It was inspired by a question about microtonal music at one of the presentations that I gave on electronic music, the theremin, an expressive performance with several devices. And before I play it for you, I want to thank those of you who have bought my music. Your support has meant a lot to me. So let's do it already. So let me turn on my cams, my keyboard and my theremin cam. So this is micro-tunneling. There's micro tunneling, y'all. I noticed another dear friend in the live chat. Hi, Ben, and Ben's tuning in from Sydney, Australia, obviously. Who else is out there? I see them virtual bodies. Yes, I can see you there. Please come in and say hi. Right there in the live chat. Okay, so I'd like to bring our guests in, but before I do, I want to say something about the topic for today. And here's the spiel: from mono to stereo to 360. There is a buffet spread. Yum, yum. Of sensory experiences for our listening pleasure. Immersive is the buzzword, and here to chat about the technology are Rory Kaplan, former executive producer of DTS Entertainment, and award-winning engineers Bob Clearmountain and Elliot Scheiner. So let's bring them in. They're here already on Zoom, so I'm going to wave wildly at them.
Hello.
Morning, Bob. Morning, Rory. And morning, Elliot. Or should I say evening?
Evening, really, for us.
Evening, yeah.
So you're all in LA, aren't you? Or California, at least, some part of California.
No, I'm on the East Coast.
Oh, you're on the East Coast.
Elliot's.
I didn't know that.
You're Connecticut, right? You Connecticut?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, so...
My home state.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. I didn't know that.
Yeah, Greenwich. Yeah.
Oh, fancy.
What? Everybody says that. Not my neighborhood.
Connecticut. I knew a couple from Connecticut once. They had a yacht. Speaking of fancy, I met them at a sailing activity, and I was learning how to sail in somewhere in Singapore. I don't know when, this years ago. And they said, "Well, we live in Connecticut and we have a yacht, so feel free to come visit us anytime you wish." Sure. I never did get to visit them. I don't know if they're still there.
Yeah. Well, I didn't have a yacht. I have a feeling Elliot might not have a yacht either.
No.
Thanks, you guys, for making it this late. I didn't realize, Elliot, you're actually on Eastern time zone, so it's fairly late for you. I hope you're not an early to bed person.
I'm early to rise, so.
Oh, yeah, so am I. There you go.
Yeah.
You're in good hands, a good company. So today's topic is all about immersive sound, which is not to be confused with surround sound. Surround, and I'm sure the three gentlemen here will assist me in clarifying anything that needs to be clarified. But surround tends to be described by numbers, because speaker systems are required, so 5.1, 7.1. And immersive tends to be an environment that envelops you with sound, and it uses metadata, like coordinates, to represent audio positions rather than your typical panning through channel style of locating sound. And this immersive, that is, therefore makes it scalable, because it's non-speaker system dependent. And I was talking to a friend of mine, and he said it's also future-proof. There you go, because it's scalable. The surround category was created in 2005, it seems, by the Recording Academy, the people who issue Grammys. And later on in 2019, they changed, or they renamed the category, the immersive audio category, to encompass these other environments out there, to include anything four channels and above, I think, if I'm not wrong. Rory, it looked like you wanted to say something.
No, I was just going to get to your point. Depending on the format you choose, not everything is object-based. And there are still formats that are discrete channel mix, which is a topic we'll get into in a little while. But there are systems like all the systems do object-based mixing. basically DTS, Aural, Atmos, Sony 360. They're all capable, but there's also discrete channel 11.1 or 9.1 mixing that I prefer, but that's something we'll get into as Bob and Elliot unleash their experiences.
Got it.
Well, yeah, Atmos is really a combination. I find it's, there's sort of the bed mix, which is discrete, and then there's the objects, which maybe I'll fly this guitar around or something, and then that becomes object based,
Got
right?
it. So you can have a combination because you build on the multiple levels. So you could begin with the discrete and then build with the objects. Would I be right to say?
Just a combination of the two. I mean, actually, my ceiling speakers are, although they're normally just the part of the bed, just left and right, I have them assigned as objects, so I could have quad up in the ceiling.
That's nice.
It's just a different way of doing it.
I got a few pictures I want to show before we head to our first line of questioning, which is with Bob. I have a picture of a Dolby 7.1.4. So this is your surround. It's speaker based, or it's your discrete level. It'll take a few seconds before it's on YouTube. Well, you see in a second. There we go. And then we have a diagram that I pulled off a forum, which I thought was very succinct. It gave you an idea how this object-based environment a platform is created, or at least like a flow chart. So the audio is combined with the metadata, and then it's rendered, and so on and so forth. So it kind of gives you, it's somewhat simplistic, but it kind of gives you an idea for those of you who are still needing some helpful pictures to make things clear. And I did get a friend of mine who is a content manager at Dolby Singapore to give me a screenshot of the Dolby renderer. So that's how that looks like. So, the three of you are old friends. I believe though you met at an interesting juncture in the nascent push for immersive audio, I'm not sure whether you were at a particular a juncture of note when you at the early stages of immersive together, but I've selected a couple of projects, one each for Bob and Elliot, or at least they selected, of a project they would like to talk about, either about whether it's a 5.1 or a discrete a project or an object-based project. So I'll start with Bob. And my little spiel for you, Bob, your make style appears on rock music's most iconic records and beyond, to include those of Bruce Springsteen, the Rolling Stones, Bon Jovi, Hall & Oates, and even CHIC. And a project of yours we shall discuss that you have picked is of The Band, which is a band called The Band. I wasn't as aware of The Band as a lot of people I know, but then I discovered some really interesting things about them. They're acknowledged as a pioneer of the style known as Americana, which I do enjoy a lot as well. So when I listened to their stuff, I thought, oh boy, I've been missing out. I should catch up. But they began as a backing group for both Ronnie Hawkins and Bob Dylan before branching out on their own. And you got to do a remix, an immersive remix of their album Cahoots, and they're celebrating their 50th anniversary of this album. And you tell me that they are releasing this 50th anniversary album on December the 10th this year.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I've actually mixed their first 4 albums so far, starting with Music from Big Pink, which was their first one from 69, I guess it was. That one, and then the band's self-titled album, which is really their best album, I think most people consider. And then Stage Fright, which came out last year, I think. And now this Cahoots. And the thing is, I did 5/1 mixes besides the new stereo mixes. I did 5/1 mixes of all those records. And then this time the label, when they called up and asked me to do this one, said, "Oh, by the way, can you do an Atmos mix? Can you deliver an Atmos mix?" And so I thought, sure, yeah, I could do that. Right away. I'll just, okay, now what do I have to do that? I got to go get some speakers. I got to get, monitoring system. I had to learn about all this stuff and kind of upgrade the room, which has got me to where I am now, And so that was a real instrumental. Just that request changed my life a bit over the last year.
So the last time we spoke, which was in May this year, you were installing the Atmos system. So what?
That's right.
If I remember right.
Yeah, there was more to it than I thought there would be. Luckily Pro Tools has really addressed this, and so because I mixed to a separate Pro Tools rig, which makes it a lot simpler. And but then there's the Dolby renderer, which on my system runs on a separate computer. I don't think it necessarily has to run on a separate computer, but it does, and it's all linked together through Dante. And then I had to get this a monitor controller. So I got this. I said, okay, what's the best one out there? And it turned out to be this Grace. What's it called? A 90. I forgot. Oh, 90 something. 908. I think it's called a 908, and rather pricey piece of gear, but it's very good, and it's very versatile. And so everything's all digital, and it's fun. Like I have a great time with it. It's a 7/1 system with 4 little speakers in the ceiling, which they're not the ones that Dolby tells me to get. I already had BM15As for my 5/1 system, so I added 2 of those.
Right.
And then it's a pretty low ceiling. It's really an 8-foot. It's the basement of my house, so it's a low ceiling. And so all the speakers that Dolby recommends are these big clunky self-powered things, and they would just stick down too far, and getting power up there and everything is a hassle. So I found these little passive they're Sony speakers designed actually for Atmos. They're designed to put on if you have a home system and you want to make it Atmos, you put these on your front speakers, and it bounces the overhead channels off the ceiling. But I just mounted them in the ceiling instead, and they point down. They said in the manual, oh, you can do it that way too if you want. If you're an idiot like me.
I think we're all idiots to some extent, in the nicest possible way. I want to show a quick clip of the band that was filmed for a documentary the documentary is called The Road. So just let me show this clip very quickly. So That's Life and is a carnival from that album, Cahoots. And as far
Yeah.
as I know, someone else engineered this album. I don't recall the name of the person. But how does it feel like, or how do you reckon with a project that you did not engineer? Because you have your own methods of tracking and recording and that kind of stuff, you know. That's what you do.
That's
Do you?
that's most of what I do. You know, I mean, most of the things that I mix, I haven't recorded,
Do,
so it's usually just a big surprise to me, whatever it
I was
is.
going to ask you, do you open the project and go, oh boy, what did they do? Have you ever done that?
Sometimes, you know, I mean, there's all kinds of different situations. I mean, I just mixed an album for Joe Bonamassa that was like so well recorded. I mean, I was just like in heaven. It was so easy and such a pleasure to mix. It was great. I mean, the Cahoots album was actually the first record ever recorded at Bearsville Studios, in Studio B at Bearsville. And they just built the studio. It was built by the band's manager, a guy named Albert Grossman at the time, who was also Bob Dylan's manager and Janis Joplin's manager. You know, he managed all these big top American stars in the 60s. And but he built this studio, and he said to Robbie Robertson, the leader of the band, said, look, you know, go use my studio. Go, I just built it. Go record something in there, you know. He said, okay. And so I think they were just still plugging wires in and trying to figure it out. And I actually don't know, unfortunately, I don't remember the engineer's name, but he was, I think maybe he was new at it, judging from the quality of the recording. But that was okay. I mean, it just took a bit more work. Well, it took a lot of work. And it was actually an interesting record for me because Robbie, on the previous albums, he was pretty, especially the first two, he wanted to keep it pretty much the same vibe. He didn't really want to change anything. He just wanted it to sound a bit better. You know, this record, he said he was never happy with it. It was almost an experiment because it was, you know, using the new studio. They were still writing the songs, I think, and he was never really happy with the way it came out. And it's kind of their least popular record. And so he said, well, just go for it, you know, and if things are sounding too busy, just take shit out. Don't get too worried about the arrangements, you know.
So he gave you producer license to do as you
Well,
please, kind of?
Kinda. And he made a lot of comments too. You know, I'd send him a mix. He never came over here. I don't know. He doesn't live far from here, but for some reason, I think he's real busy doing movie scores and stuff like that with Scorsese. But he would comment and he'd say, no, you got to take more stuff out. It still sounds confusing or whatever, you know, and just comments like that. I mean, he'd rarely have anything real specific to say, just sort of general, you know, pointing me in the right direction, which is the kind of direction I like. You know, I'd rather that than somebody like Mutt Lang that says, okay, well, the third guitar needs a dip at 800 cycles, like about 4 dB. You know what I mean? It's like, that makes me crazy when people do that, you know?
So you want to say, leave me to do my job?
Yeah, just give me the direction that you want, you know, and tell me when just
This
lead me
brings
in the
up
right.
a really interesting point, and not everybody's a Bob Clearmountain or Elliot Scheiner who gets a project that was done by a previous engineer. And you're fortunate because you had Robbie Robertson to work with you. But I'm hearing nightmares, and I'm seeing it, and I'm hearing them, of artists whose albums were recorded years ago or not so long ago, and Atmos is given direction to the labels to say, go ahead and get these mixed in Atmos because they're going to Apple iTunes. And so they're getting these guys for $400 a track or $700, whatever it is. The original artist is not involved. The engineer who did it is not involved. And you don't have someone like Bob and Elliot who really know audio or care about it. And so now I say this, and I'm sure someone's going to slap me down in a couple of months from now, but I heard a couple of pieces on Apple iTunes. And two problems I have is it sounds horrible. I don't know why it was accepted as a standard format for Apple. That blew me away. But where they don't have, if there is a only Atmos mix, they're doing a stereo fold down. You're not hearing the original stereo mix. So that's a second problem I have. And so why I bring this all up is because Elliot and Bob and a lot of guys like Chuck Ailey and Massenberg and other incredible guys, and Ed Cherney, God bless him, and Al Schmidt and a few others, were early adopters of doing this format. Mm-hmm. And always the original artist or person was involved in it and kept it to its, kept the music. It was about keeping the integrity of the song intact. It wasn't about putting things in different speakers for the fun of it. It was really about, here's a new format. It's exciting, but let's still maintain the integrity of the song. So when I listen to formats like Atmos, I have no problem with film and gaming, EDM music, things where it's not so specific, when I hear Atmos mixes, or I shouldn't even say that, I should say object-based mixing for music. Mm. It's frustrating for me because I know just how good discrete mixes have been, both in 5.7 or 11.1, whatever they are. Mm-hmm. And when I hear object-based mixing, then there's these, what I know Gavin Lurson and a few others were saying, like they have workarounds for mastering. Mm-hmm. Because if you compress object-based mixing, it changes the locations of the objects. Mm. I think there's fixes for that now. Bob, I don't know, have you worked with that yet or gotten around that?
Well, I upgraded my SSL compressor to 16 channels. Mm. And so it compresses pretty much the same, but I have control over, I can do less compression for the height speakers, or I could do less compression for the rears or the sides, so I have total control over it. And so I just deliver it. Nobody's really mastering it. So I'm delivering my Atmos mixes directly to whoever, Apple or whoever, So hopefully they don't touch anything.
Is there a mastering stage that's required for object-based? Not
there
yet.
Isn't.
No? Wow. So
as far as I know, maybe. There's one place in New York, the Lodge, I think. What's her name? Emily, whatever her name is apparently is the only one that I know that's doing it. We're thinking about setting something up at Apogee, actually. At least just a QC, if not mastering, then some kind of way of getting it to all these different services. That's the big problem.
So
yeah, Elliot turned me on to Darcy Proper over at Valhalla up in Auburn, New York.
Oh, really?
And it's Ronald Prince Room up there.
Right.
And I just listened to some stuff he did, but it was discrete. We didn't do object-based mixing. We did an oral 11.1, and Darcy's amazing. And for her, it was more level matching, just because I still think sometimes you do need touch up here and there, but it's again, it's like I said, not everybody has the luxury of having you both engineering their material, because I've heard some really funky pieces in the last 6 months. But
well, the thing, if you go on Apple Music, and they give you that little demonstration where it's a Marvin Gaye song, and they first play it in mono, and you go, well, that sounds great, and then they play the stereo version, the original mono and stereo. Yeah, it sounds great. And now listen to what it sounds like in immersive audio, and you go, what the fuck's that? That's the worst thing I've ever heard. It's like, are you kidding me?
I was at ATC's booth last NAMM before COVID hit, and they played me Abbey Road done in Atmos, and I was like one shy step short of crying. It's an album that we all know and we all love, and God bless Jeff Emmerich. He knew what he was doing, and there was a sound that album had. And I think in some things shouldn't be touched. Like I
Yeah.
thought, you know, like Sergeant Pepper, I just got that new stereo mix. And it was kind of like, no. So,
No.
I mean, I don't know who makes these decisions to allow projects, you know, it's like when Elliot did Hell Freezes Over, it kind of had a natural, it took on its own inertia because it was a demonstration I gave to Elliot, to Irving Azoff. Then Irving said, "Do you want the Hell Freezes Over?" And he put me in touch with Elliot. And you know, it was like a handful of guys, not all of you, picked it up right away. Like there's some engineers out there who even tried 5.1 who missed the boat, who just didn't get it.
I have
You
a
know,
question.
and
You
yeah,
raised some really interesting points, and I'm hearing all these questions going through my head, of course, about. So, Rory, you mentioned how this person focused on making sure the levels look right. So, I've never mixed in immersive or surround, but you know, I've done quite a lot of music work, and for me, I tend to play around with a lot of effects, and I find that the timbre of the sound does influence perceived distance or positioning, depending on what you're using to listen to the sound. So I'm curious to begin with for Bob. When you start doing surround, how did you start to position sound? Did you go all wild and do like what the Beatles did when they had stereo and they had, you know, extreme positions? One is extreme right and the other extreme left, kind of thing. Did you go extreme, or were you more kind of sensitive about the listening environment or the listening experience? How did you decide where to position or to place your sounds when you start with surround, so discreet?
Well, first of all, my attitude is always, excuse me, the real mix is the stereo mix. I always think that the surround or the Atmos mix is just an extra thing, but it should be the same. I mean, it basically is the same mix the way I do it because I'm doing it at the same time.
I
And
see.
so really I'm assigning channels while I'm listening to the stereo. So I'm sort of interpreting the stereo mix in my mind. I'm saying, okay, well, that thing's over on the right. Well, maybe that could go right rear or something like that, you know? And then at some point when I've really got a stereo mix that I'm fairly happy with, then I'll switch the monitor over to the surround, and then I'll really tune in on that exactly what it should be. And but no, not extreme really. I mean, I try to keep the focus in the front basically most of the time. And I mean, every now and then, if there's nothing like if there's no, like one of the first things I ever did was the Avalon for Roxy Music, which is something that I mixed originally in the 80s. And which back then when I mixed it, I thought, man, I wish I had more speakers to put this in because it was such a wide, wonderful sounding piece
by
of
the way,
music.
Bob, I was just going to say, you know, when I first met you, you were on stage with Elliot, Phil Ramone, Chuck Gainley, Sylvia Massey, and Bruce Swedien.
All right.
Bruce Swedien and you were asked by Phil Ramone, you know, do you guys like this 5.1? And I remember Swedien and you said, I'd rather go mono. But and I'm getting to a point because Betty called me about a year later at DTS and said, hey, you know, Bob's interested in doing 5.1. And I was excited, and I thought, how did he change his mind? Because you were pretty adamant on the panel. And then I heard Avalon, and it was an amazing mix. That was a really, really well done mix.
Thanks very much. But I was just going to say, first of all, it was Betty that said, oh, you should be mixing surround. You know, okay, well, and then wake up at 3 a.m. and goes, oh, I know how I could do that. You know, just brain starts going. But anyhow, what I was going to say was the song Avalon. At the end of the song, I mean, everything, the focus, you know, the Brian's in the front, the drums and everything, the rhythm section's in the front, and there's other instruments floating around in the surround. But then there's a sax solo that appears over your right shoulder. And then there's that Haitian girl backing vocalist who's got this magnificent voice is on the left. So they do sort of a call and answer left and right rear, and so it kind of takes your focus away, but it's kind of interesting that way because it's like you're sitting on this stage and these people appear behind you, but that's the focus. The focus moves to that, and it's not distracting from what the important bits in the front, because those Brian's not singing anymore.
So in a way, you're making musical decisions then, because you're using
sort
your
of.
musical ears to kind of decide how the composition is, what is the thrust of it, what are because you mentioned call and response, because that's a musical decision, because someone else might not consider it call and response, or might not even know what call and response is, but with your knowledge, you kind of adding your musical influences into the way that you decide where to place things, which leads me to my next question, because you've been known to do sound design at production stages. I saw a quick video on Nile Rodgers talking about how when you guys were working on Let's Dance, he played this guitar riff and you added the delay. So do you find
it's a funny story?
Yeah. Oh, well, I'm open to hearing it. But I noticed that you have this, and you're a bass player after all, right? So you do reach
Barely.
into, you do reach into your musical abilities or your musical sensibilities to do your job. So I'm
Right.
curious as well whether, when you encountered Cahoots, whether you went in with some of that and decided, oh, I need to add a little delay here. But then you were saying, was it Robbie who said, you need to remove some of these things? I'm curious what some of these things were. Were they instruments? Were they lines? Did you have to EQ? What were these things?
Well, it's for me, and it's actually something that Springsteen really drilled into my head quite a bit, and I think I might have come up with it on my own without Bruce, but you don't want anything to interrupt the narrative of the song, right? Of whatever the song's about, whatever the focus of the piece of music is, which is usually whatever the singer's singing about, but it could be something else, and so. With surround, you got to be careful, because if you got something coming at you from the rear while the important thing is happening in the front by mainly the singer, that you just don't want to do that. You know what I mean? At least for me, I don't want to do it. Somebody else might think that's fine. I don't know. I don't try to ever tell anybody else how they should mix, but so you have to be careful of it, and everything is stereo, whether it's stereo or surround or Atmos or whatever. Everything that happens should contribute and not take away from the narrative of the song, the main focus of the song, and I think if you kind of go by that rule, it frees you, because then you have opportunities that you can do stuff. You can. There are times where, you got this getting back to Joe Bonamassa, he's got this song. It's not out yet. The album's not out yet, but it's that incredible thing called Curtain Call. And there's all kinds of crazy things. There's this breakdown and the strings come in the ceiling, and kind of to delay to the front. And then at the end of the song, he does a backwards guitar solo, like from the old days that Hendrix used to do. I go, okay, this is kind of psychedelic. So that just starts swimming around the room, things like that. And he's not singing anymore. It's just a guitar solo. And so you can play with the focus like that. And the focus could go to some other place. But still, that's the focus. And you don't want anything getting in the way of it.
So it requires a totally different mindset then, because with stereo you can kind of hide some things that are not so important but are complementary. It's the backing bit of the piece. But with surround or immersive, you now opened up the whole room to not just this, but here, there, and everywhere, and you can hear them very clearly. So rather than
that's
kind
true.
of hidden in a bit form, you now could be distracted, is what you're saying. You could be distracted by what's there rather than what's here. So then how do
Yeah,
you make a
just-
decision as to what will not be distracting and can be placed there? What would they be?
Well, I mean, there's so many different ways to do it, and my particular style is to keep like most of the rhythm and the basic band in the front, and like I'll put strings in the back or horns or if it's synthesizers, then like pads and things that aren't too percussive usually. Although having said that, I did the Bob Marley's greatest hits, and there's all kinds of stuff happening everywhere. There's percussion in the back, and so there's always exceptions.
So
And,
when do you decide to fly sounds then? Because you talked about string.
Rarely,
Oh.
very, very rarely. I mean, I practically never
Oh, really?
have anything moving around. Yeah, I don't know. It's unless it's something like a backwards guitar solo or something like that, where it's that kind of suits it to me. I mean, normally I just wouldn't be moving things around. I mean, that's for movies to me. I mean, the object-based mixing was designed for movies. It's designed for rockets and helicopters and jet planes. Now, I haven't mixed a lot of records with rockets or jet planes or bombs going off or even cars going by. You know what I mean? So that doesn't happen much. So
I'm so glad you're saying that, Bob. Because I've talked to Elliot about. I'll let Elliot say a few things, but
yeah, I want to hear what Ellie has to say.
but we, Elliot did it also at Queen's of Night, the opera album, and if we had 11-1, then that would have been amazing. But even still, I was at. I'll let Elliot think say, but I went to Blackbird when George got his room set up there, and John McBride, he said, "Have you ever heard this? Have you ever heard this?" And he didn't know I worked with Elliot on it, and he put on Night the Opera, and it was all ATC big. I don't know what they were, the 110s or whatever they were around the room. And it was the first time I actually closed my eyes and didn't hear speakers. Like I was hearing the 5-1 mix and not the speakers. And it was an event. Like it was just this amazing environment to listen to it. And there was so much information on that album. So I never actually got to sit and ask Elliot, even after that, how he did it. Because he and Brian May and Roy Thomas Baker actually sat together and did that. And it took months. But I'll let Elliot explain in that process.
Yeah, I'd love to hear about that.
I do have one last question for Bob before we move to Elliot, and then we can all come together and throw questions at each other. So my final question for Bob, for this segment at least, is where did you pick the how to do this stuff? Was it basically just use your ears and, common sense, or did you have to experiment, or did someone give you some clues? Did anyone really know how to do this in the first place?
Well, when I started, no, I didn't know anybody else that really did it for music. And so I just kind of tried to figure it out myself. That's kind of the way I figured out how to mix in the first place, I think. I mean, I learned a little bit from some people that I used to watch as an assistant, but I had nobody to watch for 5-1. And I just figured, well, the wife wants me to do it, so I better figure out how to do it.
So for those of you listening in, Betty is Bob's wife, and she's the head of Apogee as well. So there you go. She has a lot of clout. in Bob's life.
Great.
Yeah.
Bob, did you know
I know.
that your 5.1 remix of Roxy Music's Avalon is considered to be, for many, to be the desert island mix? I think I might have mentioned this to you earlier on. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I saw this. I read about it. There are several votes, and that was voted as one of the on the top of the list of desert island mixes. So
Oh,
everyone there, if
that's
you
nice
ever
to know.
stranded, you better bring that one along.
It's a tough one because it's SACD, and so it's a little hard to get a hold of. I've got a PCM version of it here,
Oh
but
wow, yeah. So that's
I play it for friends.
surround audio CD, guys. If you're not familiar with the format, and
And my style's changed since then. I mean, I've evolved since then, because like I had the vocal all the way right across the front three speakers, and I don't really do that anymore. I kind of focus it in the center speaker. I started to get really friendly with the center speaker, and I kind of like it because I can now, because if it's focused in the center, I mean, I do some divergence, so there's some in the left and right, so it's not totally in the center, but I can walk around the room and and things in the center like drums and vocal stay in the same place, and so the mix doesn't change that much. We have friends come over all the time. I mean, Betty's always got her, she'll bring all the Guitar Center people over, or something like that. All her dealers come over for dinners, but we have to do the little show, and so I have to play stuff for them, and I just stand over on the side, and it's fun to listen over there or in the back or someplace outside of the sweet spot, and so that when I started doing that, I started thinking, wow, that started making me mix differently and be a little more discreet with things, because it's interesting to listen that way because you still get the surround thing, you know what I mean? But you're just a little different perspective. It keeps it interesting.
that's interesting because I know some people who veer the opposite way. Wow, now we have multiple speakers. I want to spread everyone out. What do you think, Elliot? Would you spread things out, or would you go with I'm friendlier with the center attitude that Bob has?
No, I've from the first thing I did, which was Hell Freezes Over. I tried to experiment as I went through the show. It was a live show, and I started off initially putting everything in the front and mainly just putting reverbs in the rear. But as we got further into the record, I started putting things in different places. And what I ended up doing is keeping the band, the Eagles, pretty much in the front, left, center, right, and maybe pull them out a bit into the room. But there were a lot of extra musicians there. There were strings and horns and extra keyboards, extra singers, and I started to move them around. So by the time I got to the end of the record, everybody was all over the place. I liked the idea of, when I started, there was a good deal of mono, and stereo was an afterthought at that point. And we did separate mixes. Bob, you must have done separate mixes as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Stereo, mono?
I don't know if I did separate mixes, but we used to have to compromise the stereo mix so it sounded all right in mono, and bring not put anything too extreme.
Right.
Right.
And,
yeah, we'd certainly think about it back then.
And for me, with 5-on, it was an experimentation, just being able to put things in different places and understanding how this music, which you've known for years, reacted. What was the point of view? Could you have something in the right rear speaker and have it not taken away from the overall method, like Bob was talking about?
Exactly.
Where you still maintain the focus, of the song, but now you've got other stuff coming out of the rear.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and you can do that with strings and synthesizers and pads. And music.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And it works. It feels good. Especially you get surrounded by a string section or even horns, and you just get this wonderful feeling, like
you're the
I don't know, I mean,
conductor, right? You're in the midst
well,
of the...
something. You're in the middle of it. It's just such a cool feeling to feel like you're in the middle of the music, but
Yeah.
the focus is still in the front, like
Front.
Elliot was saying.
Always will be. Yeah.
Yeah.
Elliot, do you do any creative sound manipulation to try and fit the ensemble in a surround or an immersive environment? I can't get the word out.
Well, are we
like
talking
EQing,
surround?
yeah.
Well, no, the whole point, like I've worked on a lot of old records, and at one point somebody accused me of destroying the original sound of an old record.
Oh dear.
And it didn't feel like that to me, and the artist was involved and they thought it sounded great. So it was just a matter of opinion. I do try to maintain what the original record sounded like. I don't want to be accused of destroying something.
Yeah, people can get very precious or possessive about what they have, I suppose,
Yeah,
if they've
yeah, as long as we're on that.
Yeah.
Like, if I want to hear a Springsteen record that Bob mixed, yet somebody else did the Atmos on it, and I said, well, I'm going to go to iTunes and get the original stereo. If there was an Atmos done on it, you can't do that. So I'd now be hearing a down mix of the Atmos version of the record, and the stereo version doesn't relate to what Bob had done. I don't want to hear that. That to me is really destroying the record.
Well, it's interesting that you say Springsteen, because I don't think you'll hear that, because Springsteen's not interested in Atmos or 5.1. He never has been.
Yeah, but
So,
just general.
Yeah,
or
but in general, I know
analog.
what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
that's
so,
the thing.
you know,
I feel the same thing about
It's also
your
come
stuff.
across. I haven't a system in my studio yet, and I sort of got further and further away from Atmos, because in my years in the industry, I don't ever remember a manufacturer determining whether an engineer could actually do this. And with Atmos, you have to be approved by Dolby to mix Atmos. And whatever room you're using has to be approved by Dolby as well. And that sat with me in a really strange place. Like, I've never heard of that. What gives the right to a manufacturer to determine, well, whether they want something from somebody or in their studio? It's just weird to me. So I haven't done anything yet. And then, what's being downmixed from Atmos, it's like it's not like what we did when we developed 5.1. We were mostly trying to maintain what the record sounded like, and we're all pretty true to that. And now the whole thing has kind of changed and different, and I don't know where we're at right now.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because even when you're mixing in Atmos and you're delivering it, there's just so much, you know, because people are listening on headphones. They're not listening with 12 speakers. You know, they're it's being shoehorned through some kind of synthetic process to make it supposedly immersive, which I haven't really experienced that yet in headphones, but it just sounds like a worse stereo mix, you know, mostly. In fact, you don't have that much control over, in fact, there's one thing that I noticed, you have a certain amount of control in the render as far as how much you hear of the surround and the sides and the rear and the overheads. Very limited controls. You have no control over how much LFE gets into that mix, you know. And so I've told Dolby and Apple, I've said, look, man, you gotta give the artist and the producer some control over this stuff. You know, you can't just take it and go, oh, we know best what to do with this and how to turn it into like a headphone mix. You know, it's just
Apple
screwed up.
got Beats. You know, Beats was a big smiley curve EQ. You know, lots of bottom, lots of high for
a joke.
Yeah, it was horrible. I don't understand how Apple adopted this as a delivery system for. Well, I mean, I have no problem that they are offering an Atmos product if you wanted to hit a switch and say, okay, I got Atmos, but their spatialization, I heard it and it was not good, let alone, like you're saying, the control at top to bottom, things that just bothered me about it. I think Amazon is still maintaining, if you stream immersive audio or 5.1 or any, Amazon's going to play the original stereo if you ask for it. There are still some companies who are going to do the original stereos, whether there's an immersive mix or not. Yeah. But Apple's so huge that they're dominating, and between Dolby and Apple, it just really hurts because I remember when we did Gaucho, when Elliot was at Donald Fagen's studio. It was River Studios or River North, and the first song we worked on was a great moment. It was a really funny moment because it was the first time I saw the artist jump in with enthusiasm. Is Donald wasn't there the first day. Walter was there with Elliot, and Elliot was setting up Babylon's Sister. And Elliot put just what we were saying a minute, put Donald's vocal in the center. Very little different, just in the center. And Donald came in, kind of looked like he had a bad night, wasn't really happy. He came in the room, and I just thought, I'm not going to say a word. He does not look like a happy guy. And then he sat in front and listened with Elliot for 2 minutes and said, I've always wanted my vocal in the center speaker.
Really?
And yeah, it was an amazing movement. I was like, wow. And I was like, this is really cool. So there's things like that, and that album, you know, like Gaucho, and I guess back then Best Buy were doing most of the surround DVDs and, you know, SACDs and all the stuff that was around. And the Magnolia rooms at them, they were playing, you know, Hell Freezes Over, Gaucho, all these things that were being done early on. George did a Joshua Judge's Ruth by Lyle Lovett, which also, like you were talking, had the choir in back of you on that record.
Great.
It was Lyle Lovett, cool. And the choir was in back. And there were such great creative mixes. And Chuck Ainley had Vince Gill, a song called Pretty Adriana, where the guitar delays were from front to back, but the vocal, like you said, was in this thing. And the more Atmos mixes I hear now, and I haven't heard yours, Bob, so I apologize in advance if I'm being generic. I heard Greg Penny did Rocket Man with Elton, and it was the most coherent of the Atmos mixes I've heard. Like it sounded like music. It wasn't too gimmicky, and when he did do it, I think there was a slide guitar that went over your head. It was really tastefully done, and it was really good. Al Schmidt did a Nat King Cole song. I don't know who I don't know if it was Michael Bublé or it was some jazz singer who did an old Nat King Cole thing, but it was also, I think Al kept it musical. Like he just wasn't too gimmicky. It was like really just the idea of being immersed with an orchestra around you and so on.
Yeah, great.
And that's what I'm, it's like these new guys that are apprentices or second engineers that Universal, whoever's getting to do these mixes, if they don't have you guys who are mentors basically for this format, there's not like reading history back, like when Phil Ramone was running A&R, he was apprenticing Elliot and Bob Ludwig and other people into this thing. And what I feel is like what's missing out of this Atmos formula, if Dolby's listening, they would get you guys and pay you guys to sit with these up and coming and actually teach them what music is. Right. And what the song is all about, because they're doing the gimmick. They're looking at the screen for Pro Tools. They're looking at, I'll just put this here, I'll put that there, or this is good enough. And what I noticed with all the original guys who I worked with, and even David Kawakami over at SACD, he had the same, real similar passion I did, is that we just wanted the music to still sound great, but it was a new palette. It was a new canvas to paint on, but you still wanted the song to translate. But these new Atmos mixes are sounding horrible to me. And I sit back as a consumer. I don't put on my hat of I've done so many of these mixes and blah, blah, blah. I just listen because I love music. And if it's distracting from the song, it really annoys me. And that's why I wish if Dolby was smart, instead of just shelling money out to labels and saying, get whoever to mix these things, they would really look at who the artist is, who's affiliated with it, does the artist give permission for this engineer or that engineer to do it, and get the A-list guys to at least work with the up-and-coming guys for the first couple of years, so that at the end of the day, maybe 5 years from now, these mixes are all fairly good, or we hope.
I don't think they think that way. I mean, Dolby's a marketing company, basically, Yeah, they got this technology thing in the background there, but mostly it's marketing. Look what they did to cassettes. They destroyed cassettes. It was a horrible thing that they did back then, and
the noise reduction thing.
Oh, it was awful. It didn't help. It never worked properly. People would just turn it off, and then it sounded all hissy and everything, But the other thing I was going to say that a lot of the mixes that people are hearing now are mixed from stems. They're mixed by who knows who from stems, and a lot of the stems were actually made for Rock Band, and they're not. I've heard some of those stems, and it's like, how could anybody mix anything from that? I mean, somebody asked me to mix because they saw me in the Dolby website, and they called me up and said, "Oh, could you mix an album, this album that we've already mixed?" I go, "Well, sure, but we're going to send you stems." I said, "I'm not mixing it from stems. I can't do that. You send me the original tracks, and I'll do a mix for you." You know what I mean? Because especially if everything's processed already in groups and with effects. I mean, the effects are so much, the effects are usually coming back someplace other than where they started, for me anyway. And, but that's the thing. And that's why a lot of them sounds so bad. So it's a combination of the people that are doing it maybe don't really know what they're doing, but they don't have anything to work from,
Yeah, like I said, I just wish there was more empathy towards the song and the artist rather than the marketing budget.
Really, absolutely.
Because that's something I've seen. I've just watched it unfold over the last couple of years. And look, I can't fault. There's the other side of the coin. The music industry is not what we knew it to be 25, 30 years ago. So when there's a revenue stream, and all of a sudden the label's going, "Hey, here's some money, do some Atmos mixes," it's not easy to go, "No, I'm not doing that." I mean, I mean, I'm just talking about this new generation coming up here. There's hardly any business model that's turning over album after album anymore. It's independent, and it's maybe some legacy artists that have the budgets to do it, but the indie world seems to be figuring it out on their own, and everyone's got a Pro Tool rigs at home, and they all think they're producers and engineers, and we're kind of getting mediocre in music lately. But where there's iconic records like you guys do, and you both have a list of phenomenal records. If I mean, let's just say, Elliot, someone took Moondance and made an Atmos mix of it, and it was a second engineer at Belmont in Nashville. It's like, I don't think you'd be really thrilled if you heard Moondance done in Atmos and it had no connection to what you did or what you were striving for. It's a frustration that I feel for everybody, because for years I was putting them out there, and I'm really like, there's a project we just did with, I wish Elliot could have finished it, but Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis finally, just after years, finished doing their first solo album.
Oh, good.
And
I'm
yeah,
waiting
hear that.
for it.
and it's very good, and Elliot set the tone for it. We started it at DTS back in 13 or 14, but Terry didn't like the corporate vibe there, and it was just, we had to work within so many hours of the day, and sometimes when you get creative, it's really late in the evening, and it was just really hard, and the budget to keep Elliot out here was not going to allow it to just take time. So we wound up building a room in their warehouse. We made an 11-1 room. It took a while. And just what you guys are saying, like, we took our time, we did discrete mixing, and we originally tried the DTS panner, the object-based thing, but then what happened is, if you put an effect on a audio file or a file, and then go through the panner, you've got all these different delays happening. All of a sudden you're wondering where your mix went, because you have to render that before you put it through the panner, or else the Pro Tools thing doesn't compensate for the timing. So it was the strangest thing to go through these mixes at first and discover what I didn't like about the panning and all that stuff. So we wound up doing more of phantom and more discrete channel mixing, and went to Capitol, listened to it, we did it. We're running this first one in Aural. It'll be available eventually in all formats, but we ran it in Aural to get a really nice feel for it. It just sounded amazing, and it took a while to get it right, but with vocals like Boys to Men, it's all, and it's a different song than we started with you, Elliot. They found another song, but the Heather Headley, you set the tone for, and there was this mix that Elliot had done for Heather Headley, and it's just Wurlitzer organ, and I think it's Shalea background vocals with Heather Headley, and it was just beautiful bluesy song, but you felt like you were in the studio with the band, and even just the intimacy is what I love about immersive and surround. It is a beautiful format, but now the problem is the delivery, and so streaming has got to get it right. The only one who's got a headphone who's got it right, in my opinion, are the Smith brothers, Michael and Stephen Smith. They have a box called the Realizer, and it was actually developed for film producers. So if they were, let's say Peter Jackson's working down in New Zealand, and he likes to work up at Skywalker, well, they'd put on these binaural mics in the head, and Peter would sit there and they'd run frequencies through all the speakers, and he'd have to turn at each one until it got his capture. Then they'd put on the headphones he likes to use, and it would do a personalization of his headphone. So now they could send the discrete files to him, and he can put on this box with his model in the box, and he hears exactly what he heard on the soundstage. And so
that's cool.
it's amazing. That's the level we have to get to commercially with everything. Otherwise, this Atmos headphone gimmick thing is going to destroy what we love about music.
Well, I have a good friend, a guy named Paul Rice, who came up with the idea of the surround sombrero. I thought that was a good idea. You had the sombrero, the speakers hanging off of it, you know. Just,
Ed Cherney did that at a platinum thing. He was wearing a sombrero with all these balls hanging. He said, "I
think I
wish
saw
we
that.
brought speakers." Yeah.
you know,
I could
That
go
might
for
work.
that. We've got a viewer question because you're talking about mixing from stems or mixing from stereo, even mixing from, I don't know if you've done. I guess it would be difficult to take a mono project and try and do immersive with it. But this question from our viewer, Gary, he says, can anyone shed light on what a pseudo 5.1 up mix from Stereo Master tapes even is? And
yeah, I can. Bullshit.
Yeah.
That's nonsense. It's impossible. I've tried to do that, and you can't do it.
They made a box. TC made a 6,000 box that was really developed to take a mono mix to do film, create sort of like a film stem type of thing.
Oh.
And it was okay for film or in gaming stuff when you had a single source. But when you do music, all this faux psychoacoustic stuff that tries to emulate taking a mono thing and creating a surround. It's like buying a Rolls Royce and putting a VW engine in it and kind of going, okay, let's go on a Sunday drive and see how much this feels good to you.
Yeah, right.
It just isn't it. It just isn't it. You know, it's a frustration because this has been going on since 90. You know, I mean, Pro Logic, if I recall, and you guys can correct me, if you wanted something in the rear, you just put it out of phase and it threw whatever it was to the rear. I think that was what Pro Logic was. And when you watch movies like Raiders of the Lost Ark, it wasn't such a bad thing for home theater sort of thing. In music, when a producer and artist are recording, there's an intention about that song. Like you were saying, Bob, you know, there's an intention about what the song is about, what the storytelling is about, what instrumentation are supporting that story. Elliot did a Foo Fighters acoustic record, and it was one of those. And I wasn't involved at all. I recommended. I think actually in the long run, Elliot, I think it was Brian May talking to Taylor Hawkins, recommending that you were the one who did the Queen record, so you should help them with their surround. I think it kind of back channeled that way. But we walked into Capitol one day. I was with Jeff Emmerich and my son, and we went in there, and Elliot was mixing In Your Honor, but it was acoustic side of the album. And it was uncomplicated and incredible. It was a song, it was a shanty kind of 6/8 thing, and I think it was John Paul Jones on mandolin, and just it was like this 6/8 piece, but it was a beautiful piece. We happened to be in there when you were mixing it, and I remember just feeling like we were in the back of Studio C at Capitol, so it's not a deep room, and we were just standing back there. But we felt like we were part of the mix, and we were all standing in the back, and we walked out, and Jeff Emmerich, like that was the first time Jeff said, I really enjoyed that. Because he was so against, you know,
Sure.
he wasn't a big fan of surround and all that stuff, unless he did it from scratch. And that's another topic that I hope we bring up is conceiving a project instead of going back to catalog is actually conceiving a record for this format.
Yeah.
But
Has
Jeff
anyone
was-
done that yet? Between the three of you?
Not me.
Me either.
Bob?
From the start. No.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, Dead Mouse, I know that he put an Atmos system in his place, I think up in Toronto, and he's been doing all his electronic stuff. I understand he's sort of doing it with that concept. And I thought people like, Trent Reznor and some other people would take advantage of it now. Because, but I haven't heard anything that's been composed or conceived for this format yet.
I'm
No.
curious too.
Not that I know of.
So speaking of which, I do have a clip of Hell Freezes Over, the MTV concert. It's a clip, so I'm going to show it right now
Okay.
before I forget. Here we go. So this one was remixed in DTS 5.1, but is also available in Dolby 5.1, if I'm not wrong. Now,
I have no idea about that.
Rory?
Yeah. Well, here's the deal. This is it's an interesting story. So back when we wanted to do this, Irving Azoff owned the creative rights for the record. Warren Lieberfarb at Warner Brothers, for some reason, got it in his head that if he went with DTS, he would have to pay a royalty on everything they did. And DTS already told Warner Brothers, there's no royalty. We're not charging any royalties, nor will we ever charge a royalty. And Warren came back and said, I don't want to get a little bit pregnant, so we're not going to do this. So Irving sent a letter to Warner Brothers saying, you got 30 days to do this in DTS, or we own it. So, so it reverted to Irving, and Irving insisted it got done in DTS because he came to the office and heard the difference, And at that time it was Dolby. I forgot what their system was, AC3. I forgot what it was a bit sharing format. In other words, if you did a 5.1 with Dolby, if you had a lot of information in front, it would take the data bits from the back. And if you put something in the back that was a lot of information, the data bits would be robbed. And also you didn't have a discrete subwoofer. It summed like a crossover. It took everything from either 85 or 110 down to the subwoofer, almost like a THX kind of processing. Whereas DTS was discrete. So, because you don't want a subwoofer and everything. It was just things to build up a moment in a track, or a guy does a big tom fill and you want to push the toms a bit. It's an effect. It's not meant to be constant. And so Irving liked that, and so it wound up just being a DTS mix. It was only released in DTS. If it's found its way to Dolby, then somehow probably Universal, gave it to them for a re-release, but I don't think it's in Dolby.
I looked it up and it looks like they have a Dolby release too. Recent. I don't know how recent it was, yeah. But yeah, it's available in both.
Dolby has money.
So you told me, yeah. So Elliot, I understand that you engineered that concert. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you produced a few of the tracks as well.
Produced the whole thing.
Oh, the whole
with
thing.
them.
Okay.
Yeah.
When I looked it up, it looked like you produced some of the tracks and others produced some of the remaining
There were
tracks.
there were four studio cuts that I didn't produce, but those same cuts were in a live show, and it was all on the same disc.
Oh, okay.
So
So when you were engineering, did you have any notion that you'd be doing 5.1 eventually?
no, not at all.
So when you went
Hap-
back to the recordings, did you think, why did I do this? If I had done this, it could have been more fitting in the 5.1, or were you quite happy with what you had and you ran with it?
Well, I was. As Bob said, the primary issue is the stereo. And once you have the stereo right, everything's good after that. So when I met Rory, and we wanted to do the DTS version, it was an experiment. He played me some Boys to Men, I think, and I heard what they had done, and I was so excited about the stereo was done, and now I could experiment with what a 5.1 could be like. So I had a great time. I didn't regret anything I did there.
Did you, for the recording itself, did you utilize any EQing, or in the recording, do you prefer to not influence the original sound? You leave it as it is. And then later
Well,
on in the mixing and production side, do you go in and manipulate the sound timbre or other aspects of the sound?
I try not to do too much equalization when I record, but there's sometimes you can't help it. You have to do it. Like Al Schmidt never used EQ when he recorded, and he seldom used it when he mixed. But
Amazing.
that was Al, and
Wow.
I'm definitely not in that category. But
He was,
yeah,
I'm curious because I wondered if EQing does render an instrument or does allow it to fit in an immersive space more comfortably. Or
I don't think there's that much
I
difference,
think
really.
I think Bob's got that one.
Yeah, because it's all my, because I'm doing it at the same time. Basically, it's the same exact mix. It's all the same EQ. I'm just sending everything to a different channels, and then the effects are coming back in different places. And and I mean, I adjust the way I do it is the surround or the immersive mix is coming off of a small fader, which is post fader from my stereo mix.
Oh.
So the stereo mix is there, and then I'll do little trims and things like that
Oh.
for the surround one. And but so it's the same EQ, and that it works fine. I'm EQing for the song, and so it should work no matter how many speakers it's coming out of.
So you don't do, either of you do anything extra special for surround or immersive mix, so to speak?
For me, it's based on the stereo.
Right.
If I'm really happy with stereo, I base it on that. Hey Bob, when you did 5.1s, did you have a place for every guy in the band?
What,
I
what do
mean,
you mean?
like if there was a guy who played solely acoustic, was he in the front left, and would he remain there?
Well, it'd be pretty much, I usually do it pretty much like the stereo, it would be, I might, he'd be in the left, but he might be in the left rear if it wasn't
Right.
distracting, if it was more of a, underlying part, if it was like a sort of a featured part,
But he
I'd
had
probably
a
keep it in the front.
place.
Yeah, well, that's what I like. I really do it visually, same stereo and same with no matter how many speakers. I like to kind of see. It's almost like you see where people are standing or sitting, and
Right.
I like it to be fairly discreet. Like I don't like to pull things in. I've heard some Atmos mixes where people pull stuff in or pull it, instead of having the vocal just in the front, they'll pull it into the middle of the room, which sounds weird to me. I don't. That makes me very uncomfortable.
Oh, so like they
You know,
fly it
I
in?
push everything. Well, they'll add some of the vocal into the rear speakers or into the side speakers instead of just having it in the front.
Oh.
And I don't know. I just don't like that. I like everything to have a place. I push everything. Like I'll put a guitar just in the side speaker, or maybe two doubled heavy guitars in the side speakers, or doubled acoustics or something like that. Or, I don't know, just, I just won't pull things in and add them into other speakers, other than maybe a little divergence on the vocals and the drums in the front three. That's about as much of that sort of thing I would ever do.
So speaking of
That's just me.
So speaking of discrete placement, I realized, Elliot, that in Hell Freezes Over, your Seven Bridges wrote, you had all the vocals in the discrete channels. It was for a 5.1, so there were 5 vocalists as far as I know, and they all came out of their own positions in the 5.
See, that's cool. That makes sense to me. That I would love. I haven't heard that, but I know I would really like that, and that would be pleasing, because you're standing right in the middle of these vocalists. You're right. They're singing to you,
right
around you. That
was the point. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, it was a bonus track, and Elliot and Bill Semsnick was
Semsnick.
Yeah. Elliot talked to him, and they decided it was okay to do a bonus track, and that was a stunning mix. That was exactly what you said, Bob. It was like being in the middle of all these great vocalists, and it was, I think it was recorded in 1980.
Yeah, at the Pacific Amphitheater.
Wow. It was amazing. The other thing, by the way, speaking of things you don't do or do and less of, is compression is not as used in immersive, because you're not trying to get it all into 2 speakers. So unless it's a desired effect for that instrument, there's a lot less compression going on that I noticed.
On the individual instrument, right? That's what you're saying, or the overall.
Or the whole mix. But Bob, you said that you got your SSL to handle everything in the mix?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, luckily I have a very clever assistant, Brandon Duncan, and I have some very clever people over at Apogee, and they help me out with that. And so because the compression, I use it as just a sound. The sound of the mix that's an important part of it to me. And I didn't want to lose that when I started mixing 5.1, and so I expanded it I added more VCAs. Luckily, the console had extra VCAs in it, and I just linked them together and slaved them off of the master compressor. And then when I went to Atmos, I felt the same way. I didn't want to lose that sound. I wanted the Atmos to still have that same vibe, and so I actually bought another rack of VCAs and linked it all together. And I had Lucas Vandermeer at Apogee, is just a very clever really smart analog designer. I mean, the guy's a genius. And
have you done Atmos where you didn't do the stereo?
Yeah, actually, I've been doing it. Brian Adams has a new album that he's worked on with his engineer. He just did it himself with his engineer, and it's really good. And so they're having me. They didn't do Atmos mixes, and now the label wants the Atmos mixes. So he's been sending me. I mean, they're not stems. It's all got his processing, his EQ, and so it sounds just like the original album, but I'm adding the delay of whatever delays and reverbs, and putting it in Atmos.
Wait, when you say
so
delays and reverbs, are you talking about the overall mix, just to give it some kind of a presence, or to fit in better in a? immersive?
Well, individual channels, I mean,
alright.
I don't do it on the whole thing, just
Okay.
depending on, like I'll have a delay on a vocal, and
Oh.
instead of just having it in the stereo, it might be coming back in the
Okay.
back or something
So
like that.
like the Bob
And
Clearmountain style of doing a little bit of creative sound design here just to make it
Yeah.
run a bit nicer. Yeah.
expand on it
Yeah,
a
yeah,
bit,
yeah.
I mean, I try to keep it pretty close to what he had originally. It's a really good album, actually. He's done a great job on it. And but and Brian and he's one of my oldest friends, and so he kind of knows what I'm going to do, I think. And but I really I don't stray too far from. It's a weird experience for me to have it all EQ'd and all that.
Right.
But the engineer's really good. He's got this kid that's great, and he just kept the basic EQ processing and maybe compression on individual channels and sent. So it's almost like stems, but they're not mixed together, so I'm able to spread things out.
I know for Bob,
So,
you
yeah,
like
that's the first time.
to have the tracks as per, and then you do all the manipulation. Yeah, because we talked about this previously in our previous chat. You're saying, "Let me do my job."
Yeah, exactly. I don't really want to remix somebody else's mix, like something that's partially mixed by someone else. Like if you're hiring me to mix, that's what I do. I'm the mixer. And if you don't want that, then get somebody else to do it. I'm not interested.
How about you, Elliot? Do you prefer to have them in their original form and you'll do all the manipulation yourself, or are you just as happy receiving tracks already EQ'd, for example?
I've never had that happen.
Oh,
Well,
Yeah, this is a first for me.
Yeah, you're talking about the EQ that's in Pro Tools, right, Bob?
Well, I don't know how he did it. To be honest, I didn't ask him how he did it.
Oh,
He
so
just said-
everything.
okay.
So
Okay.
each track as
Yeah.
I think he just printed whatever EQs he had. I don't know if he did it analog or what, but
Right.
because he wanted I mean, it's weird for me, and the only reason I'm doing it is because Brian's one of my best friends, and normally I wouldn't even do it, but in this particular situation, I thought, okay, yeah, I'll do this for you, man, because we're friends.
Well, that's interesting. So, Elliot, have you had cause to do any creative sound design like Bob does? Because it's part of his musical sensibility in your mixing, or especially for surround or immersive.
Sort of. I have my own system in the Acura cars. So it was actually the first 5.1 system in a car. And
It's the only one, isn't it? As far as I know, it's the only real one.
yes. Yeah, everything else was algorithms.
Yeah.
This is the only real surround system.
So, from what I
So I
understand,
did have.
they have several speakers outfitted in the car, right, in different locations.
Oh yeah,
Acura.
yeah.
It
One
sounds
of the,
great too, by the way. I listened to your system.
oh,
I got a
thanks,
chance.
man.
It sounded fantastic. You did such a good job on that, man.
Oh, thank you.
I'm yet
Do
to
it in my
Yeah,
Tesla, please.
Yeah. I'm yet to sit in an Acura to test out the sound system, but my cousin has a Tesla, and that runs really, really nice. Very smooth.
Who
Yeah,
has
the
the-
car's great. The Tesla's great, except
Yeah.
the sound system. They call it a surround system, but
Oh.
it's like Dolby Pro Logic or
Oh.
some bullshit.
Who,
What's that?
who makes the system?
It's a good question.
I don't know.
I don't know either.
They don't tell you.
I have to look it
Yeah.
up.
But it sounds pretty good, especially in the Model 3, because I have both. And
okay.
I have an S and a 3. And the 3 it's a good sounding system. It's just that it's not surround. They've advertised it as a surround. And it's just, I hate that
Right.
when they say that, and it's not.
That's what Mercedes used to have, the lexicon. I forgot what they called it. They said it was surround, but it was just the algorithm sort of thing where
Yeah.
it just, it
terrible. It's
created its own
useless.
thing. I hated
Pseudo
it.
surround. Yeah, I understand. So, the three of you were at the first surround panel. Then, speaking of surround, the one that was hosted by Phil Ramone. Is that right? Yeah, the three of you are present, and Bob. I understand that you were somewhat doubtful about the whole concept at that time. I was curious as to why that was so, and what changed your mind.
Me, I was doubtful, really. Gee, I don't remember that. No, I was. Because I was thinking, people have trouble getting their 2 stereo speakers in phase. What are they going to do with 5 speakers in a sub?
That's a very good
Oh
point,
my
actually.
God. And it's true. I still feel the same way that home systems, nobody's really come up with a really decent way to listen at, or a system that you can set up easily, a foolproof system that somebody can go to Magnolia and bring the system home and set it up in their living room, and it's going to sound right. You know what I mean?
Right.
You got to have a clue especially wiring systems in phase. I mean, we probably all had that experience. And Elliot, tell me if you've had the experience, or you had a producer or an artist saying, "Man, I bring these mixes home. They sound great in your room, and I bring them home, and there's no bass, and it just sounds terrible." When you go, "Yeah, your speakers are out of phase, dude."
Yeah, I've had that.
I'm sure you have. We all have.
I know too many
You
people
go
have
in-
done that faux pas.
There was even our tech at DTS at the time got a phone call from a customer who was really unhappy because he put all 5 speakers up on a bookshelf over the TV and asked why it wasn't working.
Right. Exactly.
I wonder where people, how they think, or maybe I shouldn't say it that way, but how they process the knowledge. Because this reminds me of when I was working with a multimedia company in Singapore in the 90s, and I was, heading marketing, and I had to look after tech support as well. And that back then we used 3.5-inch discs. And so the customer was responsible for installing a piece of software, and it required 2 discs. So they got a call in, "I'm having trouble installing this software." So the tech support guy ran through the instructions with them. "Okay, you put the first one in. Okay, yes. Done? Yes. Now put the second one in." "It won't go in."
To take the first one out, right?
Like, you think, isn't it obvious that you take the first one out before you put the second one in? Where's it gonna go? Maybe they don't realize that it doesn't just, drop out somewhere.
Well,
There's a lot of stuff
They're making wireless speakers now, apparently that are starting to work for 5.1 or 7.1. I don't know about. Yeah, I mean, I know there's a few companies that are doing wireless. I don't know how good they are. I haven't heard a system yet. And then we had a thing we used to joke about, but it's still probably true today, the WAF, which was the wife acceptancy factor, which was, can you put the speakers in back of the couch? Are you going to allow your speakers to be put up in the ceiling? And, the chandeliers there, we don't want that, the speakers in the way, whatever it was. And so there's a real estate issue. That's what I was saying earlier, is like, some of these mixes are incredible and you really want to listen to them in your home. But there's got to be a way to commercially get an available system where phasing is just childproof, for one.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, just someone who could, that's qualified to help you set up your room and tune your room. That's another thing, because not every room's the same. And the room that the system was mixed in is going to be much different than your home environment.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Interesting.
Yeah. Well, I tell you,
so
I have one of these. I have one of these Sennheiser sound bars. It sounds pretty good, and if you could just add rear speakers to that, it would, because you get the sides kind of, I don't know what it's doing, but it's bouncing stuff off the walls. But it'd be nice if they could add wireless rear speakers to that, you know, and then I have the Sonos one too, which I can't hook up because you need some special TV to actually make that work.
Oh, okay. They,
Really?
Yeah. You need a TV with an E-arc output, apparently, which is kind of weird.
I'm not familiar with that. I'll go look it
Yeah,
up.
yeah, it's a whole technical thing, which I don't know how any home, I spent hours trying to get the thing to work, and I kind of, you know, I have 2 recording studios. I should be able to know how to do this. You know, how do just regular people at home?
Exactly.
Forget
So,
about it.
Rory, you are executive producer of DTS Entertainment from 1996 and for 8 years, as far as I understand. DTS has gone through many business iterations, but how did you get involved with the company?
There was I was producing an album for Edgar Winter, and Edgar asked me to produce this album called The Real Deal, and it was my first experience producing. As you know, I've always been a musician, and the technical side of me came through Fairlight and Moog and working with CHIC. I did all the synth programming stuff. So in the studios, I got a tech background for years. But then Edgar said, "I like your sensibility, you know, of music, and you know, put it together." So I got a bunch of musicians together, and a lot of them were the guys that Edgar had been working with, Jeff Baxter, you know, and Ronnie Montrose, and Steve Ferris from Mr. Mister, and there was a couple of key guys, and then Jermaine Jackson sang a duet with him on one thing we did, and he had his brother Johnny do some stuff for him at that time, and Leon Russell, I think, did a piano piece for Edgar on it, and it was really fun. I was very involved with the label. The label was based out of Atlanta. I think it was a guy named Dick Bozeman, I think, was the president of the label. And his best friend was acting as a temporary CEO at DTS. They had been a film entity. They started Jurassic Park was their launch with Spielberg, Universal, and the founders of the officers of DTS. So it was meant to be a film format. And they had a guy, Bill Neighbors, who was the president, and he thought that at some point we're going to hit a peak in how many theaters are available. But if we get in the consumer side and come up with a chip to put DTS, we should do music and multi-channel. So I got the call from Dick. He said, "There's a guy." I forgot the guy's name. It wasn't Bill. It was a guy that was a temporary guy who brought me in and interviewed me. And I love Surround because years prior, somehow I heard a quad mix of Alan Parsons' "Dark Side of the Moon," which is still stands on its own. It was just a beautiful quad mix, and I was intrigued by that. So when I got to DTS, the chemistry worked, and they hired me. And Alan, ironically, Parsons was working for a joint venture company. The guy named Brad Miller, who was I think he founded Mobile Fidelity originally, and then he started this company called High Definition Surround. And he had hired Alan to take all his quad mixes that he licensed from Sony. It was like the Allman Brothers live at the Fillmore East. There was Eric Clapton, Ocean Boulevard, whatever it was, and there was a handful of great quad titles that Brad had licensed, and Alan, I think, was using at that time it was a Neve Capricorn, so they were able to create a center channel and create a sub channel, and he converted the quads to 5.1, and then I called up CHIC Korea's office and got CHIC to do a Bud Pal called Irving Azoff. And I think it was really Irving Azoff I give credit to, and Elliot, on a lot of making it all happen, because no one pays attention to you until you have that one good project, that one thing that everyone goes, oh, let's take a look at that. And so once Irving gave me the Eagles, then Miles Copeland gave me Sting. because Irving, he saw, oh, Irving Hayes, and then Elliot did Toy Matinee because Bill Petrell was, his son, I think, had just passed away. It was not a good time for Bill. And Pat Leonard and Elliot met, and they called Bill, and he gave it his blessing. But I never did a project that the engineer wasn't involved in or the artist wasn't involved in. I did not want to do a project where, because we were trying to set the bar. We wanted something great. So you don't do that by just going and hiring second engineers to, if it was mixed by Al Schmidt, and again, because of my relationship with Elliot at the time, Elliot was close to Phil Ramone, and Bob, all the guys, and Frank Filippetti and Chuck Ainley and all the guys. And they all were very open-armed to me about doing a project. And so getting the licensing was the hard part. It was like I had to go to Universal. We did a Most Favored Nations deal. With Queen, I had to go to Hollywood Records. Wasn't quite the same deal, but it was fine. And they loved, they knew Elliot's work. So, and Roy Thomas Baker, who originally did it, was working with Guns N' Roses at the time. So he couldn't do it. So he would come in and meet with Elliot at 2 PM, and they would spend a couple of hours going over what parts were what and what was done. So it just evolved into this executive producing thing where it was just really just trying to get the original engineer and the artist involved. And that was my goal. It was, I didn't, and then after doing 100 of these mixes, you could sit in the back of the room and you can go, what if we did that? Or like this, there'd be just those moments where I'd hear the Ear Candy would be the right time to do it. And I would suggest it. It would either work or it wouldn't. But I had enough experience now where it made sense. And usually the engineers were open to a suggestion. And it didn't mean it was in writing. It was just, a creative moment where you just go, Elliot, trying to remember what it was. It was a simple thing he did on Gaucho. There's on Babylon's Sister, there's a wind chime. And it's a slow groove, and it's like the second verse, and there's a wind chime where the guy just runs his fingers across the chimes. But Elliot took it and did a pan around the room. And it's a really, really fulfilling second. Like, I don't know if you've heard it, but it's just the grooves going, all of a sudden you hear this wind chime, and it starts to the front left, goes through the center, goes all the way around you, and it ends perfectly on time and back left. And those little moments are the gems because, like you said, you don't want to fly a vocal over and do this and take a guitar solo and spin it around if it wasn't intended for that.
How did you, if I may ask Elliot about that decision he made, how did you decide that that wind chime was worth the effort to fly around?
Elliot was an experiment. It's like it's what everyone does. It's like once you get the format under your hands and you see what the possibilities are, and you have like both Bob and Elliot have stated, once they have the bedding of what they want, there are instruments that are worthy of ear candy, like a shaker in the back. Sometimes is a glue for that moment, or in immersive now, it's reverbs that sound really good up on top, or certain delays that work really well. I'm not for putting like full-on instruments up above me, but reflections of them sound beautiful. I mean, there's just musical ways of doing things. But Elliot just said, let me try something here, and he kind of shut us all out, and it was on a Neve 8078 console. So he had to figure out the busing on that console to do this, and there was no panner, like on like there was no software panner to do this. So Elliot had to set up the buses and kind of manually automate the bus panning for this to happen, and it was really amazing to watch because it was the early days of making things work.
Absolutely. So I understand you were a producer as well. You were acting producer as well as executive producing those projects. How did you actually, after I know by the 100th project, you're like a seasoned pro, and you wouldn't have any problem selling the idea of having an alliance with DTS. But in the initial days, besides saying, well, Elliot's got some of these projects that are already doing surround, how did you then sell the idea to projects that you didn't have anyone involved with, but you thought would be really good to have this in 5.1? How did you sell the idea?
It was, well, first of all, I never talked about my music background to any of the labels or the artist. The last thing someone wanted to hear is, "Hey, I played with so and so, and let me tell you about this." So I never brought up anything to do with my background other than I was a DTS. But what I really did that was really simple, and we've all done it in our lives, is the lowest hanging fruit. I had a lot of friends in the industry. And so that call to Irving was a friend, and he was willing to go to bat. David Tickle, who was another engineer who I had worked on many albums with him playing as a musician, he was very close to Miles Copeland. When Miles found out that Irving was cool with it, then Miles was cool with it. So we got the Police and Sting. And then the funny thing is, David had been doing Sting's mixes on 10 Sumner Tales and Nothing Like the Sun. Miles came to DTS, and I played him Toy Matinee because we had just finished it. And he lit up like a kid in a candy store, and he goes, who mixed that? I said, "Oh, that's Elliot Scheiner." And then about a month later, Elliot said, "Hey, Miles Copeland calling. I'm doing the next Sting album." So he did Brand New Day. And it's kind of how it took on its own inertia. Like, I asked Al if he'd be interested in doing it, and he was working on Diana Krall. And it was part of the Universal Music Group, which already gave DTS a license. So we did a Diana Krall with Al, and then George was working with Lyle Lovett, and I asked him if he wanted to do it, and then all the engineers talked to everybody, and if I could have gotten Bob on earlier, I would have, And then we had a guy at DTS who thought he was in the music business, but he was more of a technician, and he started getting, like, I was doing a Frank Zappa project. I just finished Queen and Frank Zappa. And this is the hard part about being a part of a corporation as they grow and shift. And how I see Dolby now going through this thing. We had a guy at DTS who thought he was a producer and thought he was into music and so on. And when we did the Queen album, we did it to analog. We did it to a 2-inch 8-stack head. And at the same time, Nuendo was the only 9624 digital format available at the time. So this is the end of 2001 and beginning of 2002. So we recorded simultaneously to both formats, to Nuendo and to this 2-inch 8-stack head. And what happened is Roy Thomas Baker really loved pushing the levels. When we listen back to the Night at the Opera album, the needles were like, we called them crickets. The needles you could look at the student, they were just doing this.
Can imagine.
And so songs like Bohemian Rhapsody and the Prophet Song and Love With My Car, it smeared the imaging, unfortunately, on the hard-hitting songs. Bottom sounded incredible, but when we listened to Nuendo, it was fine. So the softer songs like Love of My Life, which is incredible on the record, in the analog was amazing. So we had to pick the softer songs and from the analog, and we took the digital ones from Nuendo. And that was a call that I left to be with Elliot.
Bob,
make sure they were. This other guy decided on his own. So I'm going to make the decision for him. When he did that, I was not happy. And then we had a Frank Zappa project. It was a Halloween concert he did at Beacon Theater in New York in '77. And he started telling Gail Zappa how he wanted to put the Blu-ray together, or the DVD rather. And I couldn't get him out of the way. And I went to management and said, if he's still here, I don't want my name on the line anymore. So I quit DTS because when you start to lose your integrity, you don't have the ability to call someone anymore. Yeah. When you cheapen your, when you lessen your ability and someone undermines it, I would just rather walk away than try to fake it. And so that, and it was a good lesson, I mean, this industry is not easy to begin with. Yeah. But then I went to Oral, and Oral have been really, really good about just letting me call the shots. And they're just getting their financing in order now and so on, and new investors and stuff. So I'm hoping Oral will let me do the same thing, and where I can hire these guys and find projects, because I love their format. Yeah. It is the nicest sounding format.
So I had a look. I looked them up. So your Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis project, that was with Oral or DT? Yeah.
I did it with Oral. I see. Yeah. And it just, we made the, I've never been in this position, but, they moved the deadline for Grammy submissions. I guess the Grammys are now in January instead of February. So you had the deadline was to get it in before the end of September for, you have to submit it and you have to have it on sale and whatever all these steps are now. And so we got it in under the radar, but it was fun because it was a long project. We started it back with Elliot, and then the guys just DTS kept having meetings about meetings. And as the corporation did, they went off. They're not even interested in music anymore, like what we're doing. They went into FM, high resolution FM broadcasting with metadata at 96K. So if you have a new car with a hard drive, you could pull it in your garage, download from your your Wi-Fi into your hard drive, and pull down this the metadata onto your hard drive and the audio at 96K for the new cars that are doing that. That's why they bought Ubiquity, which owned the broadcast space for North America.
Wow.
So
I'm sure everybody will be doing that.
Well, exactly. And so
loads of people will be doing that.
It's like they own the space for quality surround. Like they really set the bar, and then they just, and not to their fault, but we had SACD, DTS, Blu-ray, DVD audio, ultra high definition DVD. There were so many formats around 2002, 2003 that I just think the public went, we're done. Like, we're not buying 5 different machines anymore. That's when it took a hit. That's why now I'm hoping we don't settle on Atmos as the only delivery, and that we do find a streaming solution that sends out either a discrete mix that you have the software of any, whatever format, if it's DTS, Atmos, Oral, that at least you could bring it into your home or in your headphones or your phone and hear what the engineer did, not this iTunes stuff that I heard. And I'm hoping that Naris and the manufacturers really get together and figure this out, because that mistake was horrible back in 2002 or 3. Like, SACD was a beautiful format, and so was DTS. But then there was like this Meridian thing and Dolby and blah, and it just all went haywire, and no one wanted to buy, so the I don't know how it happened, but I guess, like, I have an Escalade, and my DTS CDs play in the Escalade in 5.1. and they put the DTS chip in there, but it was the L system that I guess they modeled that after. But that's the only place where I can enjoy it now, unless I go into a room, like yours, Bob, or like where it's like it's hard. That's the problem. Is now we got to find out the solution, how everyone gets to hear these formats.
We're continuing to grow more aware of the meta environment, with this lockdown particularly. The Oculus Quest has grown in popularity. The whole idea of VR has superseded the whole idea of the metaverse, Second Life and that kind of thing. And home entertainment system have been snapped up like this because people are at home and they want to watch movies or listen to music in a surround type of environment. Where do you think, the three of you, where do you think this will go in terms of the technology? I know, Rory, you have expressed your preference for a certain movement, but the way it's going, do you think there'll be more formats to add to what we already have? Because I know there are a couple others I saw. 360 reality audio, Sennheiser's got one. I think the 360 reality audio is Sony's format. How many more of these will we have? Where do you think this will eventuate?
You guys go first. You've been dealing with it. I'm going back to mono.
Yeah, mono. Really? It's a good question. That's the trouble. That's what happened in the, 2002, 2003. There were too many. There was SACD, like just what you were saying. And because I remember going into Best Buy and seeing the rack of all these. Okay, what do I want? I want to hear something in surround. And there would be SACD, but you couldn't tell whether it was just stereo or surround. There were just too many. And I think people just went, I can't cope with this. You know what I mean? I don't know what kind of equipment I need to play this thing back. It was just silly. I mean, DTS made the most sense because at least it was a home theater system. And if you had your system set up for home theater, you could play it.
Well, they went to 96K, which was fantastic. And so what was really nice is when we did our project at Capitol, for instance, Steve Genowick, I think, was mainly our second there. And he would make Elliot a DTS reference CD. We had an encoder there. And then you could take it to your home or another room and listen to it and see if it translated. That was a nice thing about doing that back then. Warner's wanted one thing, Disney wanted another, and the record labels were starting to fight over what the formats, HD, DVD, Blu-ray, and
the same thing's happening now, though. The same thing's happening. I think it is. I think that's why I think in a couple of years people are just all right, enough of this. Well, give me a nice stereo mix and I'm happy.
Well, that's why I think every engineer should make a PCM, have their original WAV files tucked away and archived and labeled properly, because I'm hoping at some point, if it gets that silly, that there's a streaming service that says, here, we can play your PCM files straight through. We will have it so it can decode at the other end, bring it to your home theater, whoever takes on that role. Because I know, I just heard 360 has it. They reinvented the 360 system for Sony. They brought in new guys to redo it. Because I heard it back 5 years ago and it wasn't very good. And they just said they redid it. They want me to come and hear it. But in truth is, there's Atmos, 360, DTS, Aural, and then like I said, there's some artificial intelligence. Goggle, Google's probably doing some stuff, and a few others.
We need. I tell you what we need is Elliot to create an Atmos system for cars.
It already is.
There is an Atmos system.
Well, yeah, the chip is not there, but the speakers are. We have upper speakers.
Yeah, but how do I play my? I mean, it's hard enough to play one of my mixes through the sound bar. You know, you got to put it on your phone, and then you got to hook it to your TV or so. There's this whole crazy thing you got to do to actually play the thing back through that system. You know?
Really?
Yeah. It's,
Yeah, well, Dolby's trying to sell. That's their big move now. They want to sell their Dakota to all the cars.
I'm sure they do.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, what's it gonna be like? I don't know. I'm sorry.
Well, I just wish there was a middle territory like a broker, like the P&E wing and the record
Yeah.
labels could sit down and actually have an intelligible conversation about the people who are getting screwed on this are the consumers, because we have
That's right.
these formats that various engineers like. You know, I know engineers who love Atmos. I know engineers who can't stand it. I know guys who just want to just do it, you know, that just put like Martin Lindbergh. He puts up a Decca mic and gets the most phenomenal recordings for classical and so on. All they want to do is have their audience hear what they're doing. And that is the big problem right now, is no one wants to get on the same page.
Walter,
Like your friend.
calm down.
Walter?
Calm down.
I believe
That's
it.
Walter.
And Walter is a she, by the way.
Yeah, Walter's. Yeah, that's right.
Wow, this will be a never-ending chat. We might have to come back somehow, but you know, I do want to chat with Bob you again about your plugin on a separate episode if you're keen. Your Clearmountain domain plugin.
Yeah, well, pretty soon we're gonna. I mean, it's gonna take a little while because we haven't started yet. But there's gonna be a Atmos, a surround, you know, an immersive version of that.
Yeah. Well,
You know,
when do you think?
hopefully,
it'll
I've
be?
planned it out. I don't know. We got this other thing coming out soon. I mean, the Apogee plugins. It's not. We're not Waves. You know, it's just the guys at Apogee that build them. We have a couple programmers, outside programmers, but we kind of design them ourselves, and it just takes a really long time. But I have this kind of phaser flanger thing coming out pretty soon.
Okay. Well,
That's great.
I wouldn't mind getting you on another episode to talk about your plugin and.
Sure.
And if it coincides with when the immersive stuff has been implemented, then great. If not, it's okay, because I think the plugin itself is quite fun to talk about. And Rory and Elliot, if you feel so inclined to chat about Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis's album that was released in Immersive, and if they are keen to be included, let me know. I think it'll be fun to not address it, but to pull it apart, more like it.
Yeah. No, it'd be fun. I mean, listen, they're big fans of Elliot. They loved working with him, and it was really a monetary and timing issue. COVID didn't help anything, and then DTS at that time was transitioning to a different world, and so they didn't want to work there anymore. It was just, you know, when you, like Bob, you're sitting in your basement, you get to work under your own terms, and Elliot has a home studio where he gets to work in his own terms. And Jimmy and Terry were coming into DTS, and it was like, you guys can work till 9 o'clock tonight. And as we know, most of our creative stuff starts at, usually, you know, you start at noon, but sometimes if you really get into it, you're going to midnight. And we didn't have that luxury, and it just, they hated it. So it kind of had to restart everything. But it'd be fun to have Elliot and Jimmy and Terry and talk about the album and when it started.
You let
absolutely.
me know when you are able to, and I'll schedule a time. And Bob, I know you're working on Brian's remix of his Summer of, what was it?
Yeah, we did.
Which summer was it?
He recut some of his hits. Summer '69 and Everything I Do, and Straight from the Heart, and there was one other one. Oh, Please Forgive Me. He
Okay.
recut all those, and I've done Atmos mixes of
Okay.
all those.
Yeah, if he's
And,
keen to chat about that one with you, that would be fun to also pull apart.
You know what I
I'll see if I
suggest?
can get him. He's hard to get a hold of. Yeah.
Okay.
No,
If I could recommend something that would be fun,
Yeah.
it'd be really nice to have Elliot, Bob, Jimmy, and Terry, and you, just you guys, just talking about, from them as artists and all of you as producers and engineers, the experience in working in this format and the experience of creating in this format from their artistic point of view,
Yeah.
and just them. And if you guys are up for it, I'll reach out and
Okay.
and put that together,
Yeah.
and because I know Jimmy and Terry are big fans of both of you, because I've heard them mention your names a lot over the years. And
I did a Q sound mix for Jimmy and Terry of one of Janet Jackson's songs years ago,
Oh.
and it was actually
that at
pretty cool.
A&M?
It was, what's that? At A&M, yeah.
A&M? Yeah, I remember Q Sound. That was Shelly Yakus was pushing that back.
Yeah, I actually really liked it. For certain sounds, it worked pretty well because it was just stereo, but it sounded like surround. If you had it didn't work for all any kind of sound, but if it was a real mid-rangey kind of little thin sound, it was like, whoa, where'd that come from? You know?
There was a big license fee on that. It was expensive.
It was stupid. It was a scam that turned out to be just some kind of weird scam, you know. But the actual technology was pretty cool.
Yeah.
You know?
I heard Roger Waters amused to death in Q and sound in it, and I actually liked it. It was actually kind of fun to listen to.
And there was a plug in there for a while that I used to use. You know.
But I would definitely let me talk to them, because they would. I'm sure they'd love to sit with both of you on this and
There you
talk
go.
about
I would.
the creative
Those guys are amazing to me. I just think they're brilliant
Cool.
producers.
That's great.
That'll be fun.
Yeah.
Thanks, Rory.
Yeah, they would love it. I guarantee it.
Yes. Okay, I've taken so much time from your evenings now, but I didn't see any of you looking too fatigued from all this. I think you've been enjoying yourselves. I hope.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, God, it's almost midnight there.
Yeah.
I know, Elliot.
Connecticut.
It's
Good for you, Elliot. Man.
bedtime, Elliot.
I'd be asleep if I were you.
But yeah, but we've totally and utterly enjoyed having you, and I hope you had a fun time too. Rory and Bob, it's been great to see you again. Elliot's been great meeting you, and
Same
I look
here.
forward to seeing you again. It will be fun. And all right, so I'm gonna leave Rory to do the connecting, and let me know when's a good time to schedule you guys. And I'll also create a separate episode for Bob to talk about his plugin. So that'll be fun, because I know there's several people out there who are curious about the Clearmountain domain. I believe that's what it's called, right? Your
Clearmountain's
plugin.
domain, yeah.
Yeah.
And there's Clearmountain Spaces too, which is really
Oh.
more of a subset of the domain. It's just some of the reverbs.
I might have to reach out to you to get some screenshots.
And if you look at my Instagram,
Yeah.
we did impulse responses for the next domain.
Oh, is that what it was? Yeah, I saw
Yeah,
it. I
a
looked
friend
at
of
it,
ours
yeah.
took. Yeah, a friend of ours is associated with Soho House, and they've bought the building that used to be the American Stock Exchange in Lower Manhattan.
Nice.
And we went in. They've been demoing it,
Yeah.
and we made friends with the foreman there,
Oh,
and he was able to let everybody be quiet for a little bit, and we did some impulse responses. It's this
Nice.
massive room. It's like
Wow.
huge. And so that was really fun.
There you go. All right, we'll
We
talk
got the
about
power station guys to help us from Berkeley School of Music.
Excellent. Okay, we'll talk about those. So, all right, I will leave you guys to the rest of your evening. Thank you so much again. Where's my applause? Here's an applause from.
Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Bob.
Elliot.
Thanks,
Thanks,
George.
thanks,
See you
Rory.
guys.
Thanks, Bob.
Elliot and Rory, great to see you guys.
Yes, you too.
You too.
So you take care, okay, and stay safe, and I'll stay in touch. Till then,
All right.
bye.
Thanks for having us.
Guys.
Take care. So there you go, you all. That was fun, yeah. You were wonderful viewers. I wish the rest of you would jump in and say hi. But hey, Val, I want to say hi to our good friend Val. I hope you're still there. And B9, someone from Santa Fe. Hi, you, whatever your name is. Please, if you do join us again, let us know so we can address you by your first name or your last name if you prefer. So that was mighty fun. Please subscribe if you haven't already. I got one of these subscription, so you can be alerted to my next stream or any activity on YouTube I've got, and also as a sign of support for my work. And if you like my music, I do have a Bandcamp store. In the next episode, that's in 2 weeks, we have another one on immersive environments or the immersive experience, and this time it's with Joel Doek, who works in with VR on VR related projects, and Chris Curell, whom you've met before on a couple of occasions by now. The second occasion was with Rory Kaplan, our guest today. They were both touring with Michael Jackson, and Chris, of course, was a synclavier expert. But when he moved to Japan, he began work and developed his own virtual audio processing methods. So there's another system separate from what we have in the commercial scene right now. So they'll be here to chat about their work in immersive audio. And I've got another episode after that on more immersive stuff. Yes, I'm on a roll, fellas and gals, because it's an area that I'm interested in as well. Okay, so if you want to know more, come back then and bring your friends. In the meantime, stay safe and stay well. So it's goodbye from me. Bye, y'all. Oh, I want to say thank you. Thanks, y'all.